This video was brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge today and receive exclusive perks. Link in the description. When I think die-cast Thomas toys, my mind immediately goes to ERTL. There have been many die-cast lines of Thomas merch over the years, but the very first started with the ERTL company in 1984. It's funny, really. ERTL is a company known for producing die-casts of tractors and farm equipment. The fact they took on a 1/64 scale line of trains is pretty bewildering in retrospect. But they killed it. The line lasted a solid 20 years before finally being discontinued in 2004. This is, in my opinion, the definitive collectible Thomas merch line. ERTL shied away from no one. They made everything. Every character from every season, all sorts of characters from the books, even vehicles and random stuff in the background. There was nothing that they wouldn't do. If it appeared on screen, there was an ERTL of it. ERTL's Thomas line is very similar to the current Pixar Cars diecast line by Mattel, where they make literally everything and change the card styles every few years. They're highly collectible, and God, it makes me wish there was another Thomas line with such variety like that today. The aftermarket for new-in-the-box ERTL models is pretty competitive now. Some of these command prices in the hundreds. Sheesh! Sadly, I am not in possession of my ERTL toys from childhood. Most are either gone now or somewhere in storage. Except for this Henry, which I found in a random box recently. Hello. But I never parted with my unopened new-in-box collection. I went crazy over ERTL some time ago and went on a several-year spree trying to collect as many new-in-box items I could get my hands on. And today, I would love to take you all through all that I have and go on a bit of a nostalgia trip. Join me as we travel back to the 90s. I don't think there's an official name for this series, so I'm going to just call the first card design the first editions. ERTL put out some of the very first merchandise tied to the Thomas TV series, with its first model, Thomas, getting released in 1984, the same year that the show premiered. ERTL's first run of engines all had sticker faces. They were all upgraded with plastic 3D ones later in 1990, which became the standard moving forward, making the sticker face engines rather hard to find new in box. First up here is probably the ERTL I cherish the most in my collection, an original 1984 sticker face Thomas, new in the box. This thing is 40 years old this year, and somehow has managed to stay fairly pristine. I love looking at old toys packaging like this, a real glimpse into the past. And not looking so pristine is this unopened sticker face James. The card is bent and battered, but I figured it was still worth grabbing. I would love to replace this one day, if another affordable new-in-box James ever comes up. And that's it for the sticker faces. Onto the 3D faced engines. Here we have a stock standard Thomas. And here is Percy. I really dig this first card design. I love the artwork, I love how the background color changes in accordance to the character. It's very retro looking, very 80s. Here we have Diesel, looking sly as ever. And here is Mavis, on a very nice looking purple card. And lastly, Henrietta, who I remember back in the day was a big peg warmer. She was never really a hot seller. Thomas was brought to the States via the half-hour variety show called Shining Time Station in the late 80s. For a few years in the early 90s, most Thomas merchandise in the US was branded under the Shining Time Station label. ERTL was no exception, and a vast assortment of characters were released on this card style in the US, complete with a beautiful hand-drawn landscape. First up is Thomas, because I need to have a Thomas on every card style I own. Then we have Percy again, looking great on that card back. And here is Toby, the one I always used as a boxcar as a kid. ERTL didn't make boxcars until way later in its run, so I had to improvise. Here is Mavis again, a character I have quite a few of, strangely. Here is Rheneas, our first narrow gauge engine in the video. Not all, but most of the narrow gauge engines were put out on this card. It must have been towards the tail end before they switched over to the portrait card. And here is Sir Handel. I absolutely love how the art of the narrow gauge engines on the back here are just blatant traceovers of the props. Very pleasing to the eye. We got a Terrence the Tractor here, another one that I remember seeing in the stores pretty often as a kid. And lastly, we have Bulgy the Bus. I always loved playing with Bulgy as a kid. He was just this giant, weighty brick. This series is known as the Portrait card to most fans. In the UK, this new card started in '93, and the US eventually adopted it in '97 once Shining Time Station had ended and they discontinued the Shining Time card. As a result, a lot of characters weren't released on this card in the US, making them rather hard to find. This is the series that I remember the most from childhood. These are my favorite cards of the ERTL range, and I believe they are the unanimous favorite among fans too. Pretty easy to see why. They're so colorful and eye-catching. Each character has their own unique card with beautiful hand-drawn Owen Bell artwork of them on it. They really stand out among the majority of the other card designs, which mostly just use the same stock artwork, only changing the character's name. I collect items on all cards, but I made it a goal of mine to collect every character in this particular series, and I've nearly finished. Let's look at them all, and go in number order. Kicking this off, of course, is Thomas. Who else did you expect? Here we have Edward. Fun fact, the rear coupling on my Edward from childhood broke off, so he was never able to pull trains. I am happy to finally have a pristine one, couplings intact. Next is Henry. I love these giant wide cards for the tender engines. Here is Gordon, who was actually pretty hard to find. I wonder if he came out here on this card. Here's James. My James, as well as a few others you'll see, still has the price tag on him. Apparently this sold at Toys R Us for $4.99 back in the 90s. I love when new unboxed toys still have price tags on them. They're a nice little time capsule of the period. Here we have Percy again. And Toby again. He pops well off that yellow background. Here is Duck, with some really nice artwork. Then we have Donald, and of course Douglas. Can't have one without the other. Here is Oliver, who was also a pain in the ass to find on this card. I have to assume he also didn't come out in the States on this, but maybe I'm wrong. Here's the Troublesome Trucks, the standard gray versions. I never did get my hands on those elusive brown ones. Here are Annie and Clarabelle, who I never liked as a kid because their bodies are all plastic and lightweight and covered in stickers. I get it, they made them light so that you can make a long train, but they felt so cheap, you know? Here we have Diesel again. Love his art too. Here is Bill, and I love the bubble style of his blister. Kinda wish they were all like that. And what's Bill without Ben? Here is Henrietta again, another one that I am sure did not come out in the US on this card. She was the very last one of this series that I got. It took forever to find her online anywhere for a decent price. Here's Birdie the Bus, one of the most bizarre ERTL models. Why is his front so slanted like that? Always looks so weird to me. Here's a fun one, Harold the Helicopter. Since Harold is so giant, they had to position him sideways on his card. It's also the only card of this series that doesn't have a white background, for some reason. I actually kind of like how that looks. Here is Trevor, who is quite a bit out of scale. I want to say Trevor is a repaint of an existing traction engine model that ERTL produced, but I might be wrong about that. Here we have Terrence again, with some very nice artwork. Here's the first humans of the lot, the Fat Controller, and a Porter. Now can someone in the comments tell me if this came out in the US on this card? And if it did they rename it to Sir Topham Hats and the Porter? Genuinely curious. I would love to own both versions if it exists. Here's good old Boko. Always a hard one to find. Everyone wants Boko. And another rare one, Daisy. Pretty sure Daisy didn't come out here either on this card, as I had to import her from the UK. Here are the Tar and Milk wagons. This is off topic, but you all ever notice how the tanker pairings were always different in each major toy line? ERTL released the Tar and Milk tankers together, and the fuel tankers separate. Wooden Railway released the Tar and Fuel tankers together, and the Milk tankers separate. And Tomy released the Milk and Fuel tanker with Diesel, and then the Tar tanker with Boko. So strange. I find it funny how none are the same. And what is this? Mavis again! I love her on this card. She really pops on the yellow background. Here we have Bulgy again, who for some reason has this really tall card. I don't really get why he would have fit on a normal one. The blister on mine has yellowed pretty badly, sadly. Would love to replace this at some point. Here's the breakdown train, called the breakdown truck for some reason. This one always kind of annoyed me as a kid because the crane and the flatbed are stuck together. I wish they were separate, like in the show. Here's City of Truro, a really nice one. What's funny is the art on the card depicts him with a Markland smokebox door, just like on the prop from the show. But the toy itself is accurate to the real-life loco, with a more traditional-looking British smokebox door. That's pretty interesting. Here we have the old coaches, those obscure coaches that only ever appeared in Season 1, and never again. Pretty crazy that merchandise of these exist. Gotta love ERTL. Here's the fuel tankers, labeled the Sodor oil trucks. The blister on mine is pretty crooked, which I think is funny. Here is Toad, who, unlike the rest of the rolling stock characters, is fully die-cast, and he's huge! He absolutely dwarfs Oliver. They look pretty strange when coupled together. Here is Scrap Trevor, which is meant to be Trevor from the episode Saved from Scrap. It features a normal Trevor with rust texturing applied to him on a flatbed, which never actually occurred in the episode. Why does the side of the flatbed say Saved from Scrap on it? A fun item, but a rather strange one. Here's the Sodor mail coaches with some snazzy looking art. Here is George the Steamroller, one of 3 known variants, because George, of all characters, has a bunch of card variants. Mine has a red card back, but a version with green also exists. And more interestingly, there's a version with completely different art, portraying George with a green face like in the Railway series illustrations. Considering George's prototype also portrayed him like this, I have to assume that they designed him in 1994 before catching wind that he'd be in the show come Season 4 in 95, and quickly created new art for him. Though, some of the original slipped out into circulation. I need to get my hands on this version. It is so fascinating to me that this even got out. Here is Coldy, our first Railway series exclusive character of the line. A very ornate little model. I always loved all the little details on him as a kid. And here's Godred, who is looking suspiciously happy on his art. Love how they mention he was taken to pieces in his bio on the back. Hey kids, look at this happy character! Did you know he died? Here's D199, who was strangely everywhere when I was a kid. Him having that bright yellow face must have made him stick out to kids. Here's Rusty, the first of the narrow gauge engines. You would think it'd be Skarloey, huh? Rusty was one of the first new in-box ERTLs that I got when I first started collecting, so he's a bit of a special one to me. And next up is Rheneas, who, like all Rheneas toys during this era, is pink instead of orange. Does anyone have an actual explanation for this? Cause even as a kid I was bothered by it. Did they purposely change his color to make him stand out or something? Or is it based on the Railway series illustrations? Who knows? Here is Duncan, yellow on red, a nice combo. And here's Sir Handel. I always loved how the narrow gauge engines models and their art here were based on the real life engines instead of the TV props, where they included details like headlamps or the accurate Giesel chimney on Peter Sam. I always preferred these to the others as a kid, and this is probably why. They're the best models of the line in my opinion. And speaking of Peter Sam, here he is! I love that accurate Giesel on him. Another really hard one to find on this card. And here's the express coaches. Y'all remember when toy lines actually bothered to make express coaches for the engines to pull? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Here's the Fat Controller's car, which is just a clever repaint of ERTL's existing 1936 Ford Coupe. Here's Lord Harry, our third mountain engine. The card on mine is sadly pretty faded. Gonna need to replace this someday. Thankfully, he's not a super hard one to find. Here is Duke. Unlike most of the other narrow gauge engines, he seems to actually have been based on the TV prop instead of the real-life engine. And here's Skarloey, who came out surprisingly late. I love that the card art is totally based on the Railway Series illustrations, complete with the pinker red and dark blue lining. And according to the prototype, Skarloey was actually going to be in this livery before it was changed to the TV colors. Fascinating stuff. Here is Stepney, another one of the first in my new in-box collection. Love his art too. Here is the Diesel, although you will all probably recognize him as Andy. You can definitely use this heavy thing to break a window. Here is Caroline, a character I never really think twice about. Not a big Caroline fan. Here's Scruffy. Since he didn't have a load like the other trucks, I always put dirt and rocks in mine as a kid. I don't think he lasted long. They also did a 2-pack of Scruffy with a random troublesome truck. The back of the card just treats this like a normal Scruffy release. The random truck isn't even acknowledged. And here's Bulstrode, the only on this card with totally unique art. I absolutely love all the background details here. There's a fishing trawler and a lighthouse and what looks like the White Cliffs of Dover. There is such a charm to this era of Thomas's marketing, where they really push the storybook escapist world that the series took place in. How I wish we could return to this. Here's the Chinese Dragon, who comes on the same flatbed as Scrap Trevor. I always thought it was interesting that the dragon itself also has its own little set of wheels. Here we have another book-exclusive character, good old Wilbert. And here's Wilbert's acquaintance, 16. The Chris Audrey books never made it to the US, so as a kid, I had no idea who this was. I was kind of familiar with Wilbert from the Wooden Railway toy, but 16 was a total mystery to me. Ah, my favorite character, Henry's log car. The fact they made semi-realistic looking logs for this is super cool. Really nice detail on those. Here's the canal boat. Another item that I cannot believe merchandise exists for. We're kind of in that barren era between seasons 4 and 5 where there was no show, so the toy lines were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for toy ideas. Hey, that's fine by me. I love all the weird background stuff like this. Here's Defuse It. Not gunpowder wagons or defuse it cars, just defuse it, because everyone knows what that's going to mean. Another example of scraping the bottom of the barrel, crane. Not Caterpillar crane or something, just crane. Here's the Sodor mail van. At least this one was actually relevant to an episode of the show. Here's the Sodor soft side truck. Again, the fact that merchandise of this exists is so fun. Here's another oddly faceless train, Bluebell. The lack of a face on this always allured me as a kid. For some reason, I was convinced that there was a face under the smoke box, and I always tried prying it off. I don't know why. That's my kid brain for you. Also, the final toy of this sucks. It's just a Thomas repaint. The prototype Bluebell was so much better. Ah, we're getting into the Season 5 stuff now. Here's the fire engine. A pretty neat one. Aha! First model with a face in a while. Here's Derek. It's kind of hard to make out on camera, but his British Railways crest actually says Thomas Tank on it, likely to avoid copyright issues. Hilarious. Wait, does Boco's? Huh, that one actually says British Railways. Weird. Here is Biplane. Again, not Tiger Moth or Tiger Moth's biplane, just biplane. Here's Lorry 2. They didn't do Lorry 1 first for some reason. And here's Lorry 3. Here's Iron Airy. It was this toy how I found out what this character's name was as a kid, because they never actually stated it in an episode at this point. And number 70, the final of the line, Iron Bert. What a fun one to go out on. Oh, but we ain't done yet. Here's a wild multi-pack called Thomas, Sir Topham Hatt, the Fat Controller, and Porter. Oh my god, what a clunky name. A big ol' heap of word salad here. Now we're getting to the really good stuff. Here is the limited edition Metallic Thomas, which I want to say was made in celebration of 10 years since Thomas started in the US, but I'm actually not sure about that. And also here is a Metallic Percy. I'm a sucker for the metallic variants. They just look so classy. We also got Rheneas, who was actually red here instead of pink. He looks lovely. I also love that the card back has a bit of a sheen design to it. And we also got Duncan, looking good. And also Rusty. I do not have Sir Handel, Duke, or Lord Harry. They do not come up often, so it'll probably be a long time before I ever get my hands on those. Here is a fully gold Thomas, made in 1995 in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Railway series. A really nice one. I love that dark blue background behind him. It really makes the model pop. So classy. And finishing out the portrait card is the Millennium Thomas, a fully silver Thomas to mark the start of the new millennium in 2000. The card on mine is ripped at the top, sadly, so I'd love to replace this at some point. I believe this was the final portrait card release, as 2000 saw some changes. In 2000, to coincide with Thomas and the Magic Railroad, ERTL put out a couple characters on this special Magic Railroad style card. They only did a select few characters, ones that appeared in the film, and I only have a couple of these. The first is a stock standard Percy, which I believe I got by happenstance in an eBay lot. And here is Diesel 10. His card is a bit faded, sadly. Diesel 10 irritated me as a kid because the claw was stuck in place. And it's also this weird beige color, not to mention the pink chevron stripes on his side. Not one of ERTL's bests. I wonder if the color choices here were based on early concept art or something. And that is all I got from this series. I'd love to get the rest of the Magic Railroad crew at some point on this card, especially Splatter and Dodge. Hopefully one day. After Magic Railroad, the packaging changed again. This is by far the least interesting card design of ERTL's entire run. Just a plain blue card, yellow background, and the character's name in the corner. It's so boring. I only have a few characters on this card, most of which are ones that only came out on this card and never again. First up here is Smudger. He's a repaint of Rheneas, but it's a pretty fun repaint. I love the black footplate. Here's Lori 1, who came out later than the other two. I love this one. I love that sea damage texture on him, and I love that it comes with an exclusive short flatbed. I wish the Scrap Trevor came on a flatbed like this. Here's the Pump Truck from Haunted Henry, complete with a gigantic Old Bailey figure. I like how this has female couplings on both ends, just like the engines. Next up is the Slate Trucks. I'm very happy they made these. I love seeing a variety of narrow gauge rolling stock in the range. Here is the Sodor Taxi. Again, love the models of the random background stuff. The fact that this exists is crazy. And here is a monster of an item, the Dyson Low Loader, aka the low loader that carried Duke away in Sleeping Beauty. I always thought that this was made only because ERTL had made a truck and trailer model previously, and just repainted it for the Thomas line, but I couldn't find anything anywhere confirming that. Anyone know in the comments? ERTL ceased distribution of their Thomas line outside the UK after 2001, which I think had something to do with Learning Curve launching the Take-Along range the next year. So they pulled the plug on the US market, and the line existed only in the UK moving forward. The card style changed again, giving us the final design of the line, which I'm just going to call the final card for this video. The design is much more interesting than the previous one, with more design elements and a little cartoon of each character in the top right corner. For some odd reason, they also trialed a new coupling system with the start of this final era. They gave all new models and most existing models this new U-shaped hook at the rear. The idea was that it was sturdier than the previous ones, but good God, it is such an eyesore. I was never a fan. Let's take a look at the final run of models from ERTL. So of course I have a Thomas on this card, complete with the huge, ugly rear coupling. Ew. I also have a Donald, which I believe came in an eBay lot. A nice addition. I also have a Birdie. Cool. We also have a Breakdown Train, and an Andy Diesel. His little cartoon art in the corner is hilarious. It totally misses the mark. And Falcon. Technically, this is a new model for this series, even though it's just their handle with a different nameplate. They never made Stewart, though, likely because that would require making a new tooling for Peter Sam's old funnel. And here's the first actual new engine of the era, Frank, one of the rare miniature railway engines in the range. He is inaccurately a 040 here, though, for some reason. Next up is Neil. In addition to the new rear coupling, all the new engines moving forward had their faces a part of their body toolings, instead of being separate plastic pieces, and so were painted. I'm gonna be honest, I really don't like that, because they chip so easily, and it makes it impossible to find any of these later ERTLs in good condition online. They started churning out the last of the Railway series characters that they didn't get to in this series. Here is Isabel, Oliver's auto coach. A pretty fun item. The fact merchandise of her exists is pretty crazy. And here is Catherine, giving the mountain engine some rolling stock. Here is Bear, or Diesel D7101 as the card says. I love this one. I was really happy when I finally got my hands on this. And here's some new humans. Dowager Hat and Mrs. Kindly, a perfect pairing. I'm happy to have merchandise of both of these characters. And here is Salty. The ERTL models of the Season 6 and 7 characters were the most elusive ones to me as a kid, for I knew that they existed, but I would never ever find them in stores here. I would have killed for an ERTL of Salty back in the day. And here is Harvey, a nice large model. I love that giant gear on his crane arm. Here is Elizabeth, who I believe has a working tipping bed. Neat. Another one that I absolutely would have killed for back in the day, Jack. I do not have Alfie, sadly. Alfie is one of the hardest ERTLs to find new in box, as he was one of the very last. It will be a while before I ever get my hands on him. And here is Emily, a really nice one. Her big driving wheel is static, but the fact it's actually spoked makes up for that, I think. I love how the model is based on her concept art, complete with the handrail above her face. The little cartoon of her in the corner, as whack as it is, even depicts the handrail in gold, just like on the art. Here we have Fergus, a wonderfully accurate one. I love those fully spoked wheels. Here is Arthur. They started picking out the wheel flanges in silver on these last releases. The little details like that really lift these. It's a shame they only started doing that at the end. Here is Spencer. The model itself is pretty fun, but what is going on with his face on his art? He looks more like Top Hat from Tugs here than Spencer.
Oh, I say hello!
And we'll end this with one of my favorites, Murdoch, a holy grail item for me. Easily one of ERTL's nicest models, and one of its last. Before we end the video, I have two more items to show. In 1989, Thomas's sister series, Tugs, aired, though it did not last long enough to really get much merchandise of it produced. ERTL, however, did produce the show's two main characters in 1990, and I have them both. Here is 10 cents. I absolutely love the art for these. They're so big and eye-catching. Unfortunately, that wonderful illustration of 10 cents here is slightly covered up by a price tag, but that's alright. It's part of the toy's history, and also reveals how cheap these were back in the day. Boy, how times have changed. These two Tugs go for some pretty crazy prices on eBay these days. And here is Sunshine. Sunshine's blister is a bit battered. There's actually a crack in the bottom of it, if you can see it on camera. But I don't mind. I'm just happy to have it. Since we're talking about Thomas merch, I want to recommend a video that is about all Thomas merch. Every Thomas and Friends merchandise cameo by Ben 10 Life. This video covers every known appearance of every piece of Thomas merchandise in a TV show or a film. The amount of research that went into this is crazy. I have no idea how he was able to compile all of this information, but props to him for the effort. Very interesting video. It certainly captured my attention the whole way through. Last week, my channel hit 100,000 subscribers, and I want to thank all of you for that. It has been a long, windy road since the old channel's takedown last year, but now we're here, only 16 months later. So many of you supported me when it happened, and have stuck around since, and I am so grateful for that. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all. I've already been officially verified, and I should hopefully be receiving my new play button soon. I will post pics whenever that arrives. 100K actually occurred sooner than I expected. I do have a special video in the plans for 100K, but I was planning on tying it with the 40th anniversary of the TV series in October. I guess there's nothing stopping me from still doing that still, so it's still a go. There will be a special 100K video, but it won't be out for a couple months. The next video, however, will be, wait for it, a new Sodor's Finest, and I'm currently hard at work on it. I think word has unfortunately gotten out on who it's on, so if you know, you know. But I'm not going to spoil the surprise for those who don't. If you do know, please be considerate and don't spoil it for others. That should be out before the end of the month. And that is all I have for you folks. Thanks again for 100K, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!